So after 44 years and 20 Bond movies, the Daniel Craig Bond timeline began, which is a 15-year time span in the franchise, which has some of the highest of highs in the entire franchise. But also those 5 Daniel Craig movies definitely do have some flaws. So let's talk about it. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about kind of the rise and fall of the Daniel Craig James Bond timeline, a 15-year time span in the franchise, which definitely has some of the greatest Bond moments ever. This unique, new, more brutal James Bond that also shows some real emotion. But this is also a timeline in the franchise that, in my opinion, at times definitely veers a little too far from the fun and the wittiness that I personally love in the franchise. Now, just a heads up, this is part 1 of the Daniel Craig timeline covering Casino Royale, Quantum of Solace, and Skyfall. If you guys enjoyed this video, maybe if we get a couple hundred likes on this video or something like that, then I'll go ahead and record part 2, which would obviously round out the timeline covering Spectre and No Time to Die. Now, the Bond movies have always been special to me. Not only do I feel like it's one of the last big movie franchises that when a movie comes out, it feels like an event, which hopefully won't change with the whole Amazon thing going on, but it's also a franchise that I kind of feel like it's in my blood. My grandpa loved all of these movies. He had all of the movies on physical media. He introduced this franchise to my mom, and she always loved the franchise as well. And to this day, my mom and I go back and rewatch these movies over and over. Not just that though, but my grandpa was also a colonel in the Army, and he was also a part of the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, during World War II, which at that time was the US intelligence agency in charge of espionage behind enemy lines during that time. The OSS eventually evolved over the years in what we call today being the CIA. So just growing up around this stuff, hearing stories about my grandpa's time in the service, seeing the weird kind of Morse code stuff that he had in his basement, the radios that he also had in his basement, the little gadgets that he had. It was just always cool to me as a kid, and I've always just been kind of drawn to this franchise in so many different ways. But anyways, let's just go ahead and jump right into it, and of course, start off the James Bond Daniel Craig timeline by talking about Casino Royale from 2006, which of course is based off of the book Casino Royale, Ian Fleming's first book from 1953. This is actually the 3rd adaptation of that book. And yeah, this is a new Bond, of course, Daniel Craig. You know, we're coming back after Pierce Brosnan's version of the character. His last time playing it was in Die Another Day in 2002. And yeah, kind of like I mentioned earlier, this is a totally different Bond. This is definitely a more human Bond, definitely a more vulnerable Bond in a lot of different ways. But man, this opening, I love it. We start off in Prague. Everything's in black and white. It's kind of bleak. It's cold. We get great lines in this opening, like, "I know where you keep your gun. Suppose that's something." And "How did he die? Not well." Really though, what a great opening. We're watching Bond here get his 00 status. He's outwitting the section chief. And I'm going to sound like a broken record along this way, talking about how Daniel Craig is a very different Bond in a lot of different ways. But he's really showing us that here for the very first time. I mean, he's in this bathroom. He's kicking ass. He's getting beaten up. They're destroying this bathroom. He's using his hands to strangle and drown this guy. And right off the bat, like I said, just a very different Bond. Then after meeting Le Chiffre for just a minute and kind of finding out a little bit of what his plans are, and obviously I'll talk a little bit more about Le Chiffre in just a minute, but then we transport to Madagascar. And we start off one of my favorite chase sequences, honestly, in all of movie history. I mean, the setting here is great. I don't feel like this is just kind of your standard paint by numbers chase sequence. I felt like, especially when I first watched this scene for the very first time in theaters, I felt like there were things in this scene that I had never seen before. Just the cleverness of the different areas that the chase, sequence takes place, from the Cobra setting where the bedding is all going down to the construction site to the embassy. Also, we have just this dynamic of this more like agile parkour bomb maker that Bond is chasing. versus kind of just like the brute force in a bit of a way of Daniel Craig. It's brutal, and it also has this big blockbuster feel in this entire chase sequence as well. What I also love about this chase sequence also is you can feel kind of like the pain and the adrenaline in Bond as he's just kind of like falling all over stuff, getting beaten to hell, and sacrificing his body to try to get this guy. Even though once that dude went up there in the crane, he probably could have just waited for him at the bottom until he came down. But regardless, man, what an all-time great chase sequence, especially in the Bond franchise. And now for a minute, let's talk about Daniel Craig as Bond, and specifically in this movie, but also just in general. I just love it when, for an iconic role like this, they're able to cast somebody who isn't really, you know, like an A-list actor yet. But yeah, Daniel Craig in this movie, he's jacked. He's still witty. He's very charming in this movie in a lot of different ways. He's kicking ass, but he's also still cracking jokes, and he's still kind of smiling along the way in this movie. You can see he's got a little pep in his step. He's enjoying being a 00 agent. Like that scene in the Bahamas when he's tilting Alex Dimitrios. You know, he's winning his Aston Martin. He's winning his girl. Oh, and the valet ticket. Just a great scene. Great Bond charisma and confidence there. Also, I'm just a Texas Hold'em fanatic just anyways, which obviously helps with this movie and helps with that particular scene. I mean, a pretty bad move there by Dimitrios, betting into a board showing an ace when he had kings. I guess he was trying to represent an ace there, but great move by Bond, checking on the river, you know, with the nuts. And of course, another reason why this movie is so damn good is because of Le Chiffre. I mean, man, what a great Bond villain. This Bernie Madoff kind of scam artist, banker, mathematician, poker shark kind of a guy, you know, with that signature eye thing going on, which is pretty much the exact same thing that happens to me when I look at emails for too long, you know, the bleeding tear duct. But Le Chiffre does what a great villain should do. He makes you hate him so much, but at the same time, you cannot take your eyes off of the screen in any of the scenes that he's in. And also in comparison to the book version of Le Chiffre, I think this is a very, very good portrayal of the character. Let's also talk about the Bond girl in this movie, Vesper. I think Vesper's good in this movie. I don't think she's great. I don't think she's necessarily one of the best or the best Bond girl in the franchise or anything like that. I do also in this movie find it maybe a little bit unbelievable just from kind of what we see on screen that Bond falls for her so quickly, but that's probably a little bit more of a nitpick. Now, obviously, Vesper is a massive character just in this timeline in general and affects a lot of the decisions that Bond will make throughout the 5 movies in this timeline. But I will say this portrayal of Vesper in this movie is a lot better than the portrayal of the character in the book, in my opinion. That character in the book, in the 1953 book, it's just kind of annoying, has really like no self-confidence at all, and just seems like she's just pissing Bond off. I mean, like half the time in that book. I also think a very underrated scene in this movie is the airport scene. I think that's a great action sequence just in general. A great fight in that tanker truck. I love it up until the very end. They don't really let us know that the bomb is on that guy's waist. I mean, obviously, if you watch really closely, you can notice that little detail there. And then, you know, you don't really notice it, and then boom, Bond just gives us that little smirk. But yeah, that whole airport sequence, I think some great tension there, and it's just a lot of fun. And of course, we got to talk about Casino Royale in Montenegro. Now, this movie came out in 2006, and of course, this was during the time of like the big poker boom in the United States, which was huge. After Chris Moneymaker won the main event at the World Series of Poker, things just went crazy. You know, poker was always pretty popular in the United States, but went to a totally different level. And I was like a perfect age to just be a part of that wave. I mean, I remember being in college in the late, early 2000s, sitting at the back of class, you know, playing multiple tables online, losing money while I'm sitting there in class. Nothing crazy, but, you know, playing, you know, $5 tables, $10 tables, whatever. But I was addicted, man, like so many people were. So when this movie came out and they were going to be playing Texas Hold'em instead of Baccarat like they did in the book, I mean, I was ready. I was buckled up and so excited. And a lot of stuff that happens here at Casino Royale, I love. It does get very Hollywood at times, of course, which we'll talk about in just a second, but yeah, it's just great stuff. And I mean, obviously, this is a classic Bond setting, this extremely remote, bougie hotel for this poker game. And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the poker game does get pretty Hollywood, and I get why they do that. They need to make it interesting for people who are either know nothing about poker or also just, you got to have some fun hands thrown in there. Obviously, like Le Chiffre's very obvious tell is very Hollywood as well. I mean, even one of the hands, it's like a straight flush over a full house, over a smaller full house, over a flush. But like I said, being the huge poker fan that I am, this entire poker game, I'm still just eating it up. I love every minute of it. But I mean, what a roller coaster. I mean, man, that poison scene, it gives me chills every single time I go back and rewatch that scene. Just how intense it is, how well it's shot. I mean, I know what's gonna happen, but I still find myself white knuckling it. And then the last 30 minutes or so of the movie, there's a lot of fun to be had in that portion as well, after Bond gets rescued from, that whole very aggressive ball scratching section. But yeah, Bond running away with Vesper, resigning from MI6, and then Vesper steals the money and is escaping, leaves kind of the breadcrumbs behind. And it very much kind of feels in that moment like the first Mission Impossible, when they're in Prague and the knock list is kind of getting away and they're following them kind of through the alleys and stuff like that. I don't know, kind of feels very similar to that first Mission Impossible. Not a bad thing by any means, but I think pretty much all of this is a pretty damn good way to kind of round out this portion of the story. I mean, great fight sequences. I mean, it's very intense as this building in Venice is kind of like collapsing on them. All the stuff going on with that. Really cool, really, really fun. I mean, even Daniel Craig has said that is probably his favorite set that he ever filmed on in all 5 of these movies, but just a very intense, unique, like a really damn cool just part of the movie. This whole last part of the movie also really gives us that glimpse into this more human side of this like government killing machine. You can see his heartbreak in a business where literally every day James Bond cannot trust virtually anybody. Growing up an orphan, he kind of felt like, especially with Vesper, like he was finally getting, some love in return, maybe like a family in a sense. And then is quickly reminded that nope, which of course this mistrust and everything that happens in this last portion of the movie, of course, blends into the rest of this Daniel Craig timeline in a lot of different ways. And then the very end, Mr. White, we need to talk. I mean, come on. What an ending.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
And kind of like I mentioned a second ago with the cardiac arrest scene, this scene also gives me chills. You can just see that Bond is pissed now. And he's coming for these guys in the sequel. Like, this isn't just a mission anymore. This is personal. But yeah, all in all, Casino Royale, to me, one of the greatest spy movies of all time. I mean, really just the perfect blend of what makes this franchise great, but also making it modern at the same time. It's fun and has that exotic feel, but it's also grittier and bloodier and as intense as ever. Casino Royale just has that unique ability to feel fresh and new and unique for the franchise, but also still has that traditional like 007 foundation within it as well. All right, now of course we got to talk about the sequel to Casino Royale next, which is Quantum of Solace from 2008, which, this movie starts off with a really fun just car chase sequence to me and immediately reminds us of this Daniel Craig era. Daniel Craig's immediately in this car and just in this entire sequence just in general, just doing what he does best, which is kicking ass and breaking stuff along the way. We're here in Siena, Italy, and Bond opens up his trunk and reveals that Mr. White is inside. Of course, continuing the story from Casino Royale, which for me is just great because not only were there a lot of unanswered questions after seeing Casino Royale, but I also just felt like, man, I could have watched that Casino Royale story for like another 6 hours because I just love that movie so much. Now, to me, this pre-credit opening to Quantum of Solace isn't as good as Casino Royale, which is obviously just an all-timer in itself. But, it's a solid intro. It gets a job done. And immediately, we're kind of seeing how mad Bond is after everything that happened in Casino Royale. I mean, 20 minutes into this movie, and he's already killed several people, the big car crash scene and all of that, the whole MI6 mole scene, Mr. Slate. I mean, I am just getting the vibe watching this first like 20, 30 minutes that Bond is really just gonna be looking for fights in this movie. By the way, why the hell would Camille go back to Dominic right after she just found out that he probably just tried to get her killed? She's like, hey guys, did you just try to kill me? Well, I'm back, here I am. But really, anyways, I mean, it does set up the rest of the movie, so I'm kind of just like, all right, let's go. I gotta say though, when Bond takes Camille off that general's boat, I mean, that is a really fun chase sequence. Kind of reminds me of some of those iconic Bond snow chase sequences in a lot of different ways. I just think this chase sequence is shot really well. It's intense. And I remember it played really damn good in the theater too. And then it ends with that great line, excuse me, she's seasick. I will also say Bond's haircut in Quantum, I mean, I kind of feel like it doesn't age all that well. I mean, it's not terrible, but just like I said, doesn't age all that well. I mean, he's got this whole, like usually you keep the front a little bit longer than the back, but he's got this whole like reverse thing where he's got these choppy bangs going on, looking like Courtney Cox in Scream 3. I will say though, the middle of this movie does kind of drag a little bit for me. I mean, you've got the opera scene, you've got the whole party scene, but really it's just kind of Bond just wandering around for like 45 minutes or so. Yeah, you have some fight sequences and stuff, but I just don't think they're all that great. There just isn't that anticipation like in Casino Royale where everybody's getting ready for this big high stakes poker game where basically everything is gonna be on the line. Poor Mathis too, man. First he gets wrongfully accused, tortured, then he's chilling at his Italian villa that he got for free, and then once again makes the mistake of hanging out with Bond again. Plus on top of that, the poor bastard was alive when Bond uses him as a human shield and then tosses his corpse into the trash can. It's like he wouldn't care. And I mean, I get it. Do I really care where I'm buried? I mean, I'm dead, but yeah, you know, I mean, I probably wouldn't really be down to be thrown in a trash can. Now, even though the overall story of Quantum of Solace isn't the most interesting story in this franchise to me, I do like this idea of just Bond kind of going off the grid. Now it's kind of gotten to the point that some of the people in the organization and just in general in espionage think that he's turned at this point. So he's not only fighting his enemies, but he's also fighting his allies too in the later stages of the movie. But it's kind of fun seeing Bond having to sneak around more than ever because he can't just call the agency anytime shit hits the fan. This also shows like his relationship with M evolving because at this moment where he's, you know, like his true colors would come out, M is starting to see, okay, Bond actually might be the only person that I can trust. Also in this movie, as basically everybody that Bond is coming into contact with is dying left and right, you can see that part of Bond that likes to crack a lot of jokes, be witty and charming, is kind of starting to chip away and starting to dwindle away, which is something that will only grow and grow and grow kind of as the Daniel Craig movies move along. And pretty often, like a lot of these Bond movies do, I mean, their location scouting is just insane. They're able to find these places where I think to myself, when I watch the movie, I'm like, is this place real? Or is this on another planet? And like in this movie, that setting at that hotel at the end of the movie where the climax takes place in that desert in Chile, I mean, that looks like a place that's not even real. It's insane and it's incredible at the same time. Once again, just props to the location scouting part of just the franchise in general, because this is another one of those places that's pretty damn cool. And to me, when I look back and I think about this movie, I don't know what it is, but I always think about Quantum of Solace is like the Bond movie where you just picture Bond in the desert because of this whole ending sequence to the movie. Also, Camille killing the general, that has got to be one of the most satisfying kills in this entire franchise just in general. I mean, I think they just did a great job really making you hate that guy so much and also really root for Camille. I also thought after immediately showing her be a badass, then incorporating her fear of fire, I thought that was a great idea to just kind of encapsulate both sides of her character's story and her character's trauma. But overall, the ending to Quantum of Solace, I just think it's a fun ending. We've got some great fight sequences, a ton of explosions, and it's definitely, like I said, a unique setting. I will say though, I'm a little bit mixed on the whole demise, the whole ending to Dominic's character. On one hand, we get that great great line from Bond. He's like, I bet you don't make it 20 miles before you're considering drinking that oil. You know, obviously that's great. And that whole concept of that is awesome because he was going to squeeze the water from these people for profit. So just the fact of him becoming so desperate about his need for water is a great way to wrap up his character. But on the other hand, it would have been cool to just get that glimpse of ultimately how he actually died. But I mean, we did get to hear the story of how he got the 2 bullets in the back of the head and did have a stomach full of motor oil. So, I mean, that ain't half bad either. But after damn near a couple hours, don't you go forgetting about Casino Royale just yet, because Bond is not yet finished cleaning stuff up from that movie. We transport to Russia and Bond is here to confront Yusef, the man that used and betrayed Vesper. Bond then sends the Canadian intelligence agent outside of the room, who's also wearing the same knot as Vesper. But in this scene, there's virtually no music, which I love. It just kind of sets the mood for everything going on, and it's so satisfying when that music does finally kick in. And then, boom, when that outro music does finally kick in, it's an ending that honestly gives me goosebumps still to this day. Now, all in all, Quantum of Solace isn't the best Bond movie ever or anything like that. It isn't even the best Daniel Craig movie. It definitely has its flaws, but I will say it is a very solid entry in the franchise to me. Great action, great Bond girl, great set pieces, and some really satisfying revenge moments, and to me, I just think it also just has a great ending. All right, and of course, up next, we got to talk about the third Bond movie in the Daniel Craig timeline, which is Skyfall from 2012, which ended up making, after it came out, $1.1 billion, and at the time was the 7th highest grossing movie just in general ever of all time, and still to this day the highest grossing Bond movie ever. So then Skyfall starts out in Turkey, right? Bond comes onto the scene, he sees that a few agents were attacked and somebody stole this hard drive with this list on it, and now Bond is in pursuit. Now, don't get me wrong, this opening chase sequence does have some fun moments, but out of these 3 movies that we've seen so far in this Daniel Craig timeline, this is definitely my least favorite opening up to this point. We get some corny CGI green screen stuff of Bond on the dirt bike on top of the buildings that honestly to me looks really bad and looks really, really fake. Now, I love the Mission Impossible franchise, don't get me wrong, but some of the stuff in this opening sequence feels too Mission Impossible. They're trying to get this list, especially combined with the fact of, okay, we're gonna have this chase sequence and this fight that's gonna happen on top of a train. Then also we've got this Agent Eve who's basically out here like throwing this mission. Bond is kind of teaching her how to drive. She's basically missing every single shot. I mean, Bond here in this scene, he's kind of being proactive. He's not hesitating. He's going after what he needs to go after. She's just kind of like frantically reacting to things that are happening. I mean, M even has to tell her like, go after them, for God's sake. And obviously, you know, the whole whoops, I accidentally sniped Bond, possibly making him fall to his death whole thing. But just this whole sequence, it's making her character immediately, I don't know, just very unlikable for me. And even when they try to redeem her character a little bit later on in the movie, I'm still just like, I mean, they should have tried to make her just like a little bit more of a badass. Which, by the way, Bond surviving that fall and then also that waterfall on top of the shots that he's already taking, I mean, we're almost starting to veer into like Marvel superhero territory here. To me, this intro really excels at the way that it's shot and the setting that these sequences are taking place in, not necessarily actually what's unfolding on screen. I don't feel like what they're actually doing with the characters in this opening sequence is all that unique or interesting to me. But like I said, still a very fun intro, especially in a movie theater setting because there's a lot of action and things happening. But there's not a lot of stuff in this opening where I feel like, oh man, never seen that before, you know? But with that said, this is kind of a small moment, but I do really love that first shot of Bond kind of blurry coming into the screen and into focus. I don't know, there's something about that that's also going to show you some of the cinematography they do later on in the movie, which is amazing, which we'll talk about, but I like that shot to start off the movie. But with that said, man, we do get treated to one of the greatest songs in Bond history, and one of those songs in this franchise that to me definitely has some of the most replayability for me without a doubt, and definitely an all-time classic from Adele. There's also something that I just love about that moment when Bond comes back from playing dead, as he calls it. To me, that's truly like one of those big moments in this timeline for Daniel Craig's character where I start to really feel like we are kind of a part of his life. We've kind of seen him so far at some of the highest of highs in his entire life, but also some of these lowest of low moments in his life as well. We're just really feeling like we're a part of his journey. But it's kind of like this diamond in the rough. You've got one of the best agents in the entire world that's back, but he's beaten, he's scarred, and he just needs a little bit of polishing, but you know that Bond is still gonna get his revenge. But the way this movie looks, the cinematography throughout this entire movie, it is honestly just unreal. It is unlike anything we've ever seen in a Bond movie up until this point in the franchise. I mean, that scene on top of that skyscraper in Shanghai with all those colors going on, that fight sequence where it's just like they're dark silhouettes with the blue colors and all of that. I love that. Plus, we get those shots in Macau that are incredible as well. And then, of course, all the stuff in Scotland towards the end of the movie also. I mean, it is incredible stuff. And speaking of shots in this movie, I love that one shot when we first meet Javier Bardem's character. He comes down that elevator and the camera is kind of slowly panning in on him when he talks about the rats on his grandmother's island. I just find myself locked in. There's not a lot happening, but the way he's telling that story and the way that shot is all pulled off, yeah, I just feel like I'm locked into that scene, and I definitely want to learn more about this guy. And of course, in this movie is the movie that we find out that Javier Bardem's character, Silva, is behind a lot of the stuff that we've seen in the previous movies in the Daniel Craig era. His character, Silva, was a former agent that was working for M, that he felt like he was betrayed by M, kind of similar to how Bond was shot because of M's orders to possibly sacrifice Bond in order to save the life of many other agents. But yeah, I like that angle of adding that Silva was a former agent that worked for M, and now he's basically on a revenge tour. And one of my favorite scenes in this entire movie is when Silva and the rest of his crew show up at M's hearing in order to take M out, and then Bond shows up. Honestly, going back and watching that scene, it definitely gives me goosebumps. Bond aims at M's boss and then gives him a little wink and then shoots at the fire extinguishers so they can get away. It's just all the shit that the espionage team has gone through. All the pressure from the higher ups that just like dismantle. You guys are old fashioned. Just to have an agent actually physically come onto the scene and save the day. I don't know, there's that whole moment. I just think it's a really solid sequence in the movie. And of course, we have to talk about Skyfall, the childhood home of James Bond, and honestly, one of the most beautiful places that I can possibly imagine up there in Scotland. It's also a plus that a lot of my family is from Scotland as well, but another one of those chances to kind of peel back the onion on who the James Bond character is. Not too much though, just little glimpses into what happened and why the character is the way that he is. And it's kind of funny because there's so many similarities here with this whole sequence that goes down at the Skyfall house with movies like A Nightmare on Elm Street, when Nancy is kind of preparing the traps and everything for when Freddy Krueger comes, or even Kevin from Home Alone. I can't help but think about that whole moment when Kevin pulls out the mac and cheese and the music kicks in and he's just preparing for battle, setting these booby traps. I don't know, that's just something funny that I think about when I think about this ending to this movie. But yeah, it's very unique for a Bond movie. It's a great ending though. We get fun lines like "Welcome to Scotland," but this whole moment, it's kind of like the Vietnam War in a little bit of a way, because it's like, even if you have more forces, more firepower, if you're going into someone else's territory where they know the lay of the land way better than you, they can set up traps and stuff, it's going to be hell for you. And yeah, of course, at the end of Skyfall is the end of the Judi Dench era as M, a character that James Bond definitely saw as a little bit of a motherly figure in kind of a weird way. But yeah, a legend, not only in this franchise, but just in the movie industry in general. Somebody who had been in this franchise even before the Daniel Craig character, but a character who, yes, definitely will be missed playing M in this franchise. Then we find out at the end of this movie that Eve is actually Moneypenny and Mallory will be the new M. Very much feeling like the old Sean Connery days when Bernard Lee played M and we saw Moneypenny's character pretty regularly in those movies. Really though, in the end, Skyfall is a movie that looks incredible. This movie feels so well crafted in a lot of different ways. And yeah, this movie doesn't really have the jokes or really the lightheartedness like I prefer in a lot of the Bond movies. I do wish they would have done a little bit more of that up to this point in these three movies, especially especially in Skyfall. I wish we would have gotten a little bit more of that because, yeah, this is a very serious movie at times. I do think the opening to Skyfall could have been a little bit better, but like I remember when I left the theater after watching this movie originally, I remember thinking, yes, this movie has some flaws, but that was a damn good Daniel Craig style Bond movie. But there you go, everybody. That is part 1 of the rise and fall of the Daniel Craig Bond timeline. Thanks so much for watching. If you want some more videos from me right now, go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me. If you don't want to miss future videos on the channel, the best way to do that is to make sure you subscribe. All of my social media links will be down below in the description if you want to go and follow me over there. But again, thanks everybody. Really appreciate you watching. My name is Matt, and I will talk to you in the next one.